I Am Mike Tyson versus James Bonecrusher Smith, March the 7th, 1987, 34 years ago today, champion versus champion in the HBO boxing tournament. Let's look at a few factors going into the fight. So, Mike Tyson, the WBC heavyweight champion, Bonecrusher Smith, the WBA heavyweight champion. So this is a unified affair. Both guys looking to go on and grab the IBF belt after to become the undisputed heavyweight champion. So, going into this fight, I Am Mike Tyson has just beaten Trevor Berbick to become the youngest ever heavyweight champion at 20 years and 4 months. He now surpasses Floyd Patterson's record, who was previously the youngest ever heavyweight champion at 21 years and 11 months. Floyd Patterson and Mike Tyson both trained by Customato. Bonecrusher Smith started boxing late, age 27. But let's have a brief look at his record. So going into this fight, he's the WBA heavyweight champion. But let's go back a little bit. 1984, he goes to England on foreign territory and knocks out Frank Bruno in the 10th round, which gives him the fight against Larry Holmes for the championship. Holmes was the champion back then in 84, and he loses to Holmes on points. Then in 1985, he fights Tony Tubbs. He loses to Tubbs on points, so as you can see, Smith a bit hot and cold, up and down. He then fights Jose Revolta, April 1985, and wins on points. Then fights terrible Tim Witherspoon, June 1995, and loses on points. February 86, he fights 5 times. He fights Marvis Fraser, loses on points. He knocks down Marvis Fraser in the 5th round, but can't get him out of there. Then he fights Mike Weaver, 1st round knockout. Then he fights Jesse Ferguson and David Bay, wins them both on 10 rounds. And then he fights Tim Witherspoon in December 1986. So this fight against Witherspoon is meant to be Witherspoon versus Tony Tubbs, because Witherspoon beat Bruno to become WBA heavyweight champion. But for some reason, Tony Tubbs pulled out with an injury, so they pulled in Bonecrusher Smith last minute. So guess what? James Bonecrusher Smith knocks out terrible Tim Witherspoon in 1 round, and that's a bit of a shock. He knocks him out in 1 round. He knocks him down 3 times in the 1st round. Mike Tyson is ringside, and after the fight, everyone's saying, okay, well, now we've got 2 champions who are going to fight. They're both power punchers. Who's going to win? Will it be like Foreman versus Fraser? The general narrative was they think Mike will win, but there was a little bit of intrigue going into the fight because Smith was a big puncher, yeah? And Smith before the fight was saying, I'm going to do you like Foreman did Fraser, trying to make reference to the fact that he was big like Foreman and Tyson was short, and some say stylistically similar to Joe Frazier. So before we actually get into the fight, let's just read a bit from Mike Tyson's book to tell you how he felt before the fight. And then after the fight, I'm going to give you some of Bonecrusher Smith's words in more recent times reflecting on the fight. Here we go. So, I didn't go into the fight at 100%. I was suffering from a pinched nerve in my neck that would haunt me for years. So I was in a bit of pain, but I walked into the ring like I owned that place. I thought that ring was my home, and it was where I lived. I was totally comfortable in its circumference, but still, I wasn't a seasoned fighter. So Mike referring to the fact that he was, skilled, but still young, age 20. My ego was so out of whack. Then I felt like John McEnroe. F you, who cares? I had so much respect for him. He was a beast, and that was just how I felt. I felt entitled to anything concerning the boxing mode, and if I wasn't getting it, then you were going to hear from me. I went into the ring first. When Bonecrusher came in, we faced off, and I didn't feel any threat at all. I knew I'd be too elusive, and he wouldn't be able to hit me. He was a good, strong fighter. He knocked out a lot of guys, but it was difficult for him to get to me. So as Mike says, Mike goes into the ring first, then Bonecrusher second. I Am Mike Tyson's record was 28 wins, 26 knockouts. Bonecrusher Smith's record was 19 fights, 5 defeats, 14 knockouts. So as you can see, Mike, 28 fights, but only age 20. Bonecrusher Smith, 19 fights, age 33. So Mike's going into the ring with a man who's 13 years older than him. So looking at round 1, Mike is out jabbing Bonecrusher Smith. When they get close, Smith is clinching. Mike is, landing the occasional right hand and left hook to the head as well. At the end of the round, after the ref breaks it up, Mike throws a punch at Smith. Referee Mills Lane warns Tyson, says, listen, you do that again, I'm going to take a point from you. Round 2, Mike Tyson out jabbing Smith again, and he throws a left hook, and then after that, a headbutt from Tyson hits Smith. And that's a cut on his head, but there's no point taken, but Smith's cut, so a bit more worried. The general theme of the fight is that Mike Tyson, really good with his jab, out jabbing Smith. Smith is 6'4", Tyson 5'11.5". He's out jabbing Smith. As he steps in, even though Smith has a much bigger reach, he's as he jabs, sometimes he's dipping down for a looping right hand over the top, and as he also when he comes in, he'll be a bit adventurous and throw a lead left hook as well. Bonecrusher Smith, quite predictable. His jab is good, but you know it's not a very jab. It's not like a jab to the head and a jab to the chest. It's just a jab to the head. But Mike's head movement is so good. He's not getting hit with much. And according to HBO, they said that Smith was landing 3 punches per round. But that's not enough to beat Tyson. Tyson also, you know, good fast feet, changing the angle here and there. But where I would criticize Mike Tyson is that when Tyson got really close, Smith would hold him and Tyson wouldn't punch in the clinch. End of the second round, it's either the second or third round. I think it's the second round. Smith gets deducted a point by Mills Lane for clinching. He's holding way too much. He's being negative. There's times when the crowd is booing because of, you know, Smith's constant holding and a fight can't break out. So, see, yes, Mike should do more when in the clinch, but Mike was the one doing most of the fighting. And he basically, throughout this fight, he won every single round. Round 7, Mike falls to the floor. It's a slip as he falls to the floor. Smith dips down with his knees and is about to throw a hook, but stops. It's only a slip, so it's no knockdown. What I did like in round 10, because, you know, it was getting a bit too predictable, and Mike was only really throwing, like, at the most, 3-punch combinations. In round 10, rather than Mike out-jabbing to the head, occasionally just a straight jab to the belly. Straight jab to the belly. And then the 11th round, same thing, straight jab to the belly, and a few left hooks to the head. But Mike's on top of this fight. Only 20, and he's winning almost every single round. We now go to the 12th round. The crowd are booing because, you know, Smith's fighting negatively. He's able to navigate around the ring, but he's quite nebulous. Tyson's trying to get into that zenith exultant mode, but there's not enough contact. So in the last 10 seconds, although Tyson wins a round, Smith throws a right hand out of nowhere as Tyson's walking in. As it hits Tyson, and he's stopped in his tracks. Smith then throws about 5 hooks. They all miss, and Tyson kind of falls forward onto Smith. You can't really tell if Tyson's hurt, but he was stopped in his tracks, and then that's it. End of the fight. So you got Mike Tyson now, the unified WBC and WBA Heavyweight Champion, still only 20. Okay, so that's the fight. I'm just gonna quickly read to you some of Smith's comments in more recent times about the fight, and I'll also leave a link to the article where he talks about this particular not this fight, but about this fight and other fights in his career. It's a Ring Magazine article called The Best I Face. But before I go into it, just to let you know a bit of background information, Bonecrusher Smith from North Carolina. He grew up on a farm, so he was sort of like plowing the lane and chopping wood and whatnot. His parents pushed education, so he went to college, and from college he qualified to go to university, and at university he got a business degree. So he left uni with a business degree, and then after that, age 24, he went into the army. So he went to the US Army. I believe he served in Germany, and he started boxing in the army and did pretty well. After boxing in the army, he then turned pro at 27. So not everyone's going to be as good as Mike Tyson, but I'm making that point out to say, even though Smith wasn't a great heavyweight of the 80s, you have to give him credit. He was still a successful guy because, you know, he came from a farm, and look what he's done in life. You know, university, army, started boxing late, and won a belt. Anyhow, let's move on. So, Smith, in this interview, he says, I do speeches now. I travel and do network marketing. Smith said of his life today. Right now, I represent a company called Total Life Changes. So, he talks about the best jab he ever faced, and his best jab, he says, is Larry Holmes. Best defense, Mike Tyson, he was short. I was 6'4", and he was 5'10". He would duck. He was taught how to slip punches and duck. Bill Caton had a library of fights. Mike learned from those videos and studied fighters. Best hand speed, Tyson. Tony Tubbs had real good hand speed. He was real fast, but Tyson had good hand speed as well. They were different fighters. Tubbs was more of a boxer. Tyson was more of a puncher. I'd probably pick Tyson. So obviously in this interview, Smith is being asked who had the best attributes as a boxer, and he'd give an answer. I'm only going to answer the ones where he talks about Tyson because it's relevant to this fight, all right? Best chin, Tyson. I hit Tyson with good shots. You had to be hit to hit. You had to hit him to be around. Best puncher, Tyson. He knew the anatomy and where to hit a person. He knows the soft spots like solar plexus. He knows the pressure points of a body. The next day I was sore and hurt. And then when he goes into like best boxing skills and best overall, he goes with Larry Holmes. So that's the fight. Tyson now has 2 belts, 1 more to go when he faces off against Tony Tucker. But as for Ruddock, that's kind of like the last time you see him at the top of the heavyweight division. He does fight Razor Ruddock and gets stopped, and he also fights Michael Mora and lose on points. But yeah, Bonecrusher Smith, not the best heavyweight, but fair play, he won a belt, and it's like a very smart guy that had a good life. Okay, so on this day in boxing history, I am Mike Tyson beats James Bonecrusher Smith on points. All the best. Take care. Bye bye.